Well, hello, everyone. We are here today on, April 14th to discuss the balance that Warhammer has restored. Good old Games Workshop. So I'm the administrator with Red Bull Battle Reports. I am joined here by Adam Dye. Adam's been an avid fan of Warhammer for 6 years because he was gifted a Chaos Army set. He's been dedicated to the Pantheon since. The last 3 years, Adam has been a local judge for many tournaments in the East Bay RTTs. And of last week, he hosted the major Badger Brawl, which we stream live on our channel. Go check it out. The self-proclaimed War Master of Antioch spends most of his spare time keeping himself up to date on new rules as they are released, testing and tinkering competitive lists, and playing games of Warhammer with his club, the Black Shields, as well as running 2 local crusades for his local shops. So we're here tonight in our time zone, and whatever time zone it is, to kind of go over the balance to see if that's what Games Workshop achieved. Because lately we've been hearing about Custodes, Tau, and the Harlequins. We're going to see if Adam's take as if they've done a good job of balancing or if they messed it up. So we're going to let Adam do a little shout out if he wants to, or just talk about his club, the Black Shields. But we're going to get through this and see if they balanced what they have unbalanced. So Adam, the floor is yours.
Thanks for having me, Johnny. Glad to be here with RBBR and all the guys out there. You guys have a wonderful crew. Shout out to Mason. One of my favorites from you guys, the strategist. And then, of course, shout out to all of you who decided to join us for the night. I know we have a lot to go through with these new rules updates. I'm sure plenty of you have been looking at them, but we're going to go ahead and take this piece by piece.
Can you see that okay, Adam?
Yep, I can see it just fine.
Perfect. So I'll let you decide where you want to stop. Down the left and back up. How's that sound?
Yeah, down the left, back up. Sounds good.
So first thing we got is Armor of Contempt. Sorry.
Yeah, this is obviously as a Chaos Marine and just general Chaos player, this is something that's very exciting for me. Obviously, all of those Adeptus Astartes and Sanctic Astartes players are very excited to actually feel like they have a bit of defensive. So, let's get into it. So we get to worsen the armor penetration characteristic of any attack by 1, as long as you are not equipped with a Storm Shield, Relic Shield, Combat Shield, or any relic that replaces these. Sacrosanct Shields and Force Shielding abilities are also exempt from these bonuses, and any other rule that worsens or reduces your armor penetration does not stack with it. So what that means for a lot of us, and I know people have seen a lot of things online and a lot of fun takes about, AP0 bolters giving, armor because they're slapping armor onto you as they're shooting you. That's definitely something not to consider. AP does not have an AP0, it's AP-, and at that point it can no longer be modified. So let's get that just out of our heads right away. But what this means for us in this update is that effectively Terminators and regular power armored bodies have a 1-up and 2-up armor save against anything that's not AP0. So if you are shooting at me with AP1, I still have a 3-up armor just as if I were a Terminator. It's a huge buff, something that definitely needs to be considered for all of us Astartes players. And a very good thing to note as far as the Heretic Astartes is that all of the Chaos Space Marines, Thousand Suns, and Death Guard pretty much have the Heretic Astartes keywords with a few exceptions such as Cultists, Poxwalkers, and Chaos Spawn. So this really opens up a lot of different toolboxes defensively. And one of my favorites personally is the fact that, 2-up armored Demon Engines effectively is a thing. Unless you shoot at me with a bolter with no AP. Then I'm at a 3-up still.
So does this mean I go cut all the Storm Shields off my guys?
Not necessarily, because obviously a lot of your units do lack invulnerable saves, which despite the Tau Hammerhead ignoring invulns as well as many other ignoring invulnerabilities, invulns are still very much a very important thing to have in the meta. Anything that allows you to ignore damage is incredibly good, since we are definitely seeing a huge ramp up in the damage capabilities of armies these days. I mean, the Void Weaver, which I mean, of course, everyone talks about the Void Weaver, is one very good case of this. You know, in 8th edition, it was a D6 damage weapon, and now it's just a bit bonkers.
So does this, because you run a Chaos Army, is this going to affect the list you run, or is this going to affect any way you run your list or change something up?
So it definitely provides me with a lot more ideas, one of which is sort of the style list that we saw from Scott Toby at our top table over at the Major Badger Brawl. Having lots of demon engines that have high toughness, already good 3-up armor saves, and sporting 5-up invulnerables native. In Death Guard, a lot of your demon engines have -1 to their damage characteristics, so they've got an extra layer of defensive capabilities, and now they are effectively immune to AP1 bolters and other sorts of small arms fire that a lot of people will typically decide to utilize on things like blight drones and mephitic blight haulers and things that are typically dangerous, but sometimes they're things that you can take care of with volume of fire instead of quality of fire. And now that is less of an option for opposing armies. Another thing that I've been looking at is, of course, you know, Death Guard Terminators, which we will get to more later, but having lots of ignore AP1, essentially Death Guard Terminators means you're effectively at a 1-up save for the entire game, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. So you think the Space Marines will see a little more play with this, or you think this is just, it's nice?
I think the biggest benefit for my loyalist counterparts is the fact that Dark Angel's standard Terminators aren't taken as much, and this will help change that, because obviously your models such as Deathwing Knights and your Assault Terminators, you typically pop a Storm Shield on them to give them the 1-up armor. Well, effectively, your regular Terminators with bolters and power fists or swords will also have an effective 1-up armor save against anything AP1. It's, like I said, it's just a really great defensive buff, and in codexes that either are missing in 8th edition or are now mostly outdated for 9th with the release of more armies and the obvious power creep that we suffer from, they've fallen on the back end, and this really helps them get their feet back up in the front.
Perfect. So do you want to talk more about that or move on to the next one?
We can go ahead and move on.
So aircraft, we already talked. I mean, nothing's changed here, right? It's the
same. Nothing changed with aircraft. You can take 2. Good luck.
Perfect. Here's where it gets a little spicy.
This is definitely one of the more spicier rules in this update. A huge hit to a major part of the meta, indirect fire weapons. An indirect fire weapon targeting units that is no longer visible now not only suffers a ballistic skill modifier to their characteristic of that attack, units that are getting shot by it also get to add 1 to their armor saving throws. Now let's talk a little bit about some of those really meta indirect fire weapons. So Plague Burst Crawlers, one of my personal favorites, and just like any Death Guard and Chaos player will tell you, probably one of the most efficient units in our toolbox. Well, now, unless we have them exposed to being able to see instead of hiding, which typically we do because entropy cannons are a thing, shooting at units in the backfield that aren't visible actually is a lot worse. So it's not only the fact that the ballistic skill has been worsened, but if you have any negative to hit modifiers, those stack. You can be at a feasible -2 to hit now. So Tau with airburst fragmentation projectors at AP1, say you Montcalm and you're within Montcalm range, well, you get AP2. What if you want to shoot at a unit of Dark Angels, Terminators sitting on an objective behind a building that you can't see? Well, you shoot at them. Your AP is 2 because you're within your Montcalm range, but we ignore one of those APs, so it goes to AP1, and I get +1 to my armor saving throw, so you're effectively again at 0 AP. And you're not getting rid of 3 wound Terminators with 0 AP.
And then with the dense terrain, so that worsens your ballistics characteristics, does that also mean it can stack with the dense terrain modifier?
That's correct, because that's a modifier to your actual hit roll, which is capped, but there is no cap for your ballistic skill characteristic except for not being able to hit on ones, and you can't be driven past sixes.
So let's say your plague burst roll hits on threes, all of a sudden you're hitting on what, four? You're hitting on fives if you're firing over a piece of dense terrain?
Correct. So it's a huge hit to the viability of those units.
Okay. So dense terrain with this new player place terrain that we're all seeing could really come in key where you put that piece of dense.
Absolutely, because if you decide to then centerpiece a forest in the middle of your map on your side of the territory, you could then go 4 to 6 inches back, place a ruin, and then cock another ruin 6 inches back behind that. Well, anybody hiding in this ruin behind another ruin and behind a forest is getting +1 to their armor save from the cover, +1 to the armor save from the indirect fire penalty, and they're -1 to hit, and you already took a ballistic skill modifier penalty as well. It's a major hit to indirect fire weapons.
Unless
You're Astro Militarum.
and so that's pretty big boost for them with their basilisk, and I don't know what else they have for indirect fire, but border teams, right? Those are indirect fire, right?
Yeah, people don't take this. So wyverns, manticores, a lot of these indirect fire tanks that would be taking these hits actually saw themselves have an effective increase in viability because they are not taking these penalties, as well as, you know, some of the other buffs that they've got in this Dataslate as well, which we will cover later. But being able to still take, and the way I see it as a guard, like if you're a guard player and you don't want to take indirect fire weapons and artillery, why are you playing guard? Except for you Krieg guys and your horses. Hands down, you've got that.
So let's see here. All right, now the next
well, let's continue on that page and finish off that page, and then we'll go to the next page, because we do have a major change here as well.
Well,
so,
I mean, for me, it hits my 2 company vets in the heart. It's hurts.
A little.
I play Black Templar. It's like bodyguard ability. The jankiest, one of the jankiest rules around. It's not lookout, sir, or it used to not be lookout, sir. But now they just like, oh, it's lookout, sir.
Well, I mean, with the prevalence of the bodyguard rule between sacrosancts, crisis suit bodyguards, death shroud terminators, company veterans, it really has actually killed a very specific, very niche part of the game, and that's snipers. I mean, what's the point in taking snipers when every army you're going to face has some sort of, oh, you can't shoot my character even though you can shoot my character? Well, now we're going to be possibly seeing more of these Marine players taking Phobos units with sniper rifles. It's been so long since I've seen them, I forget their names, but you know, there's something that hasn't been seen in a while, and now we're going to see them come out a little bit. We're going to see people decide like, oh yes, I can finally take out these characters before they get to the midfield and keep buffing those units. The Death Jester, I know, had, I believe, a specific rule to ignore the bodyguard ability, and had it become some sort of super sniper, although thankfully I have not had to play against Harlequins pure. So couldn't tell you from experience, but this helps snipers a lot. It's definitely something that hurts the units, especially because units like Death Shroud Terminators that recently got a pretty significant points increase has lost a big chunk of the reason why you take them. But at least you can have one guy sitting around to give lookouts, sir, so that railgun won't hit you in the face.
And Vindicare Assassin, though, I was looking at those could be viable, huh?
If they had, you know, more than one shot in a reroll, sure. But if I had a dollar for every time I saw Vindicare just miss its shot for being the best sniper in the galaxy, I would probably have like $20.
So, and then just in this bottom, they just clarify what is bodyguard ability, because, you know, they're really clear about writing the rules sometimes. So then they clean up what is a bodyguard. So,
yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. All righty. Yeah, because I use the bodyguard rule. It helps because I put Hulbricht right out in front, then hide the 2 company vets behind a wall. And like I saw, like I guess with sisters players, a really janky thing you could do with spreading out Celestine and her 2 things to cover a wide area and be like, oh, I've got bodyguards. You can't. Some nonsense.
I can't say I'm any more innocent than you on that, Kale. I've also placed Death Shroud Bodyguard behind a building with Typhus in the front to completely nullify an AdMech player's shooting phase, because guess what? He's the only thing you can see and shoot, but he's bodyguarded.
Yeah, that's fun. Until
it's good for the game that we have this update, that we change that. But it is fun when we get our gimmicks while we can.
9 Void Weavers. So
We'll get
let's
there.
move on to the sisters, the Adeptus Sororities. So now you get a miracle dice every turn, not battle round, every turn.
Correct. That's massive. I mean, you're doubling your miracle dice, and since they don't expire, you can just keep stacking them and use them when you really need. Miracle Dice has always been a great mechanic for the Sisters of Battle, since their reintroduction in 8th. And it's also been very reminiscent of Tzeentch Age of Sigmar having essentially cheat dice. So whenever you're looking at something that you are guaranteed to have, it's going to be good. And since you can use those miracle dice for just about any roll you need, it doesn't matter whether you roll 1s or 6s on it, you're probably going to use them anyways.
1s come in handy for attrition. Very handy. How about I don't know much about the sisters. I haven't played them much often, but the second bullet point about Valorous Heart, is that what do you think about that? Is it a helpful one, or is it just like, that's a nice thing?
So Valorous Heart maintains itself as the most defensive way of playing Sisters of Battle. If I recall, they also ignore AP1, which is a really interesting mechanic for them, if I'm remembering this correctly. Let me actually look it up real quick so that way I'm accurate. But Stoic Endurance, I am fairly sure it's ignore AP1, because in 8th edition it was ignore AP1, and with the banner character near, you could ignore up to AP2 with it. So let me see here. Stoic Endurance.
And they also, the Adeptus Sororities also gain the benefit of the Armor of Contempt too. So
as well, which is where this will come in. So I'm just making sure that I'm correct on this, but Order of the Valorous Heart. Yes, so each time an attack is allotted to a model with this conviction, if it has an AP of 1 or 2, its characteristic of the attack is reduced by 1. Now, in the Armor of Contempt, it has a specific section that says if you are already under an ability that gives you that, it does not stack. So what they did here is that instead of having them ignore AP1 and AP2, they now only ignore 1 pip of AP by reducing it. But they now have no rerolls can be made against them, which is very powerful. I mean, plague weapons from Death Guard are completely countered with this. It's something that it's very strong. I mean, we can tell you from Emperor's Aspects and Custodies, being able to shut off someone's rerolls is very annoying as an opposing player.
Yes, it is. I know that from personal experience. So do you think this will boost up the Sisters of Battle some, or you just think it'll just it'll help them survive a little more against all the nonsense that's coming down the road?
Well, the good thing about it is that Armor of Contempt obviously affecting all of these different orders, that these orders now all have the ignore AP1 sort of deal by reducing the pip down by 1. So if you really want to play hyper defensive, you have the option of going Valorous Heart to remove remove wound rerolls. And at the same time, if you still want to go into your hyper offensive list with all of the multi-melters you can dream of, you still get a bit of a defensive buff. So it definitely opens up a lot more viability for them, in my opinion. Also, we won't be seeing just 30 Sacrosancts on every list.
Oh, they got to change all that now.
Oh, yeah.
The people that need the most help, Astro Militarum. So
Ooh,
we've got, oh, I was going to try and fit it all in one, but it's not. So they got,
it's quite the update.
yeah, quite the update. Oh, yeah. What is it? For me, I forget. But advisors never benefit from this rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, explode sixes on hit rolls, unmodified.
So a big part of this is the fact that this is definitely a regiment keyword. So it won't actually affect a lot of the other stuff people see, like Tempestus Scions, because Tempestus Scions don't have regiments. So while a lot of people have been very popularizing them for the hotshot las guns and plasma gun spam, this really keys into your more traditional Astro Militarum list, where you're throwing bodies on the board and they're followed by tanks. We already know about Lehman Russ being put up to 2-up saves, but if you could imagine having a Punisher Gatling cannon with additional AP shooting at you with its 40 shots because it half moved and its 6s that hit are automatically wounding you, you're going to hurt. It's going to hurt. Demolisher cannons were already a popular option, but now you're having to remove the ability to, you don't have to rely on getting those wound rolls. You just have to get those hits of 6s and you're getting something through.
Oh, yeah, that's 6 is the auto hitter. Good. I mean, auto wound. Sorry, I misspoke there. But yeah, and your tank's going to be around, your Lehman Russ are going to probably be around a little more with a 2-up save. So,
yeah, definitely a big help. On top of that, tank orders are now no longer locked to what is it called? Lehman Russ units. So now your tank commanders can actually give orders to your artillery pieces. So you've gotten an additional buff to your artillery pieces, as well as ignoring the new negative modifiers. If you can imagine a tank commander putting an order onto a full payload flat 3 damage Manticore to reroll its hit rolls of 1, or if you're Cadian, reroll all of your hit rolls, then you're going to see these guys do a lot more damage output.
They need the help. They definitely
do. So they definitely do.
Maybe they can take out the new Tyranids. That's
we'll see.
That's what that ad said, right? So
mostly for indigestion reasons.
And then we have the orders thing where, what was it saying, within 6 they get a free order, it sounds like, from what this is, if they do the same order.
So essentially what this is, and this isn't new, this was actually part of the old Balance Dataslate as well, but essentially I give an order to a unit, that unit can then pass that order on in addition to the next unit within 6 inches, and then on and then on. So if you have all of your units tightly packed together within 6 inches of each other, you could potentially go first rank fire, second rank fire, first rank fire, second rank fire, first, and now you've doubled your las gun shots in a moment, which is pretty amazing. If las guns were anything more than strength 3.
Guard's going to be the new top of the medic. Now, was the infantry squad? I can't remember. Was this in the last data sleeve, or this new? The 10 models, 60 points.
So this is new, but the really crazy thing about this is that your unit size remained the same. You took a small points hike, I believe, but all of your war gear has been reduced to 0 points. So you're free to throw a plasma gun into the squad, a melta gun. Basically, you get a kit out your guard to your heart's content, because weapons for militiamen are very common.
Everyone gets a las gun. There you
go. Everyone gets a las cannon now, right? Yeah.
Like
heavy weapon team. My big thing with this is, what does that mean for the heavy weapon team? Because you can spend extra points in a 10-man unit of infantry guard squad to add a heavy weapon model. and it just takes 2 of your models out and replaces it. So essentially you're at a 9-man squad, but if it still only costs 60 points to do so and you get a free upgrade, we could be seeing a lot of heavy weapons added into these squads to help take out those larger units. But honestly, I suspect seeing a lot more plasma guns and units from this more than anything. They're just reliable.
We will see some more guards coming on the board. Come on, guard. Now, everyone's favorite, the Golden Boys. They've been smacking stuff around, those 9 jet bikes. I mean, I saw over the weekend, Jesse McGowan with his list. I saw him going up against Tyler with the town. Like, oh, his bikes are gone. This game's over. Nope. And he came back and he ended up winning the whole tournament. So this one's probably a little more immediate, and you'll see a lot of effect on this. What do we got? What do we got here for the Adeptus Custodes, Adam?
So the biggest thing I think in this is the fact that you are losing OBSEC on all of your infantry now. So your characters aren't just automatically holding objectives. Your Terminators and your Wardens aren't automatically holding objectives. Sagittarium have become very popular in the current meta because they're the only real volume shooting unit as far as infantry go for Custodes. So at this rate, you're going to be seeing a lot of Sagittarium hit the board. No one wants to take guard squads unless they're sword and board if they really need the defensive. But having those multi-damage bolters just slugging downfield, and you're still just sitting in the back holding objective has always been an important thing for Warhammer since 8th edition, since we swapped over to more objective holding missions. But this is a major blow to them. My God, if you could imagine how many times you've seen someone probably drop units of Terminators charge in and bam, you've got 8 models on an objective with OBSEC. Well, now you don't have that OBSEC. Now you have to throw more sword and boards onto the table to get those center grounds and hold them before another person's OBSEC comes up and kicks in.
Yeah, they're rough. They were rough. So they were.
Another big thing is that, Esteemed Amalgam and Emperor's Auspice and Martial Discretion can only be used once. So Esteemed Amalgam, I believe, is the Emperor's chosen specific stratagem that allows them to select a unit and swap them into whichever shield host fighting style that they wish.
Yes.
Very potent usage of Emperor's Chosen because Shadow Keepers is a second very strong faction. Personally, I feel like it is the strongest faction as of this update for Custodes. Now that they're only limited to being able to do that once, it really takes a good player to see when is the most opportune time to swap myself out into another shield host.
Now, is this once per battle, once per round, or just once and you're done?
So once in your life, once you've hit that ticket, you're never allowed to do it again. Yeah, so once per game, obviously, but it is pretty funny that they don't put that little caveat in there. Rules is written for you guys. Rules is written. You can only use these stratagems once ever competitively. If it's on stream, we'll see it. We'll see you cheating. You're only allowed once.
Now this is the big one though, because I know I've played some Custodes sometimes, and I saw it in the tournament a lot, where all instances for the Arcane Genetic Alchemy and the Emperor's Auspice infantry. So those bikes, you're not getting transhuman.
Correct. On top of that, with losing the Emperor's Auspice, obviously you could see players pushing that up 4 command points a turn if they really wanted to. Once in three times a turn. Once in your fight phase, once in your opponent's shooting phase, once in your opponent's fight phase, and now you're just who cares if that you brought this Primarch that cost a quarter of your army or an eighth of your army, and now he's completely useless as a support unit because I'm just going to shut off the rerolls you're granted from him. Another more out there kind of experience is, you get a Jacarro Weaponsmith. Yeah, I bet you have heard that guy very recently, haven't you? A Jacarro Weaponsmith. If you're not familiar with this, it is a agent of the Imperium that is an ape with digital weapons.
Never heard of them.
He is hilarious. The model is amazing. But Jacarro Weaponsmith has a fun little rule where when it's selected to shoot in the shooting phase, you roll a d3. He either gets rerolls to hit, rerolls to wounds, or rerolls to hits and wounds. So you're like, cool, I'm going to take this cheeky little guy that doesn't really do much, shoot him at some custodies. Oh, his whole spiel is gone. Fun. Great. That's just the most minor of offenses. Obviously, you go up against anyone with Death Guard with full rerolls from Arch Contaminator, gone. So having that as once per game, again, it's another one of those moves that it takes a skilled opponent to determine when their best usage of that's going to be. And then, of course, Arcane Genetic Alchemy and Emperor's Office using only on infantry means that these bikes are going down. We're not sitting there have to go, oh, great, transhuman, no rerolls to hits, no rerolls to wounds, no rerolls to damage. No, I'm going to take out those bikes.
Yeah, I saw a couple bikes and some Void Weavers on eBay today. So.
Oh, of course, you're going to be running Custodies with a traveling player's patrol of Void Weavers, right?
No, I mean, like, people are dumping them on eBay now.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, that's not going to work anymore.
Yeah, and that's what I love and hate about the Warhammer community is that people are so quick to pick up a unit that is overperforming and then just so quick to dump it when they see that they don't feel it's viable. It's still a very viable unit, and I still imagine seeing 5 of them because now you're not worried about the stratagems being too expensive. You can't use it on them. Throw 5 of them into a unit, run them up the board, use those salvo launchers and kill something. Don't get rid of your bikes. Your bikes are your few reliable heavy shooting units.
Just don't take 9.
Just don't take 9. Take 18.
Now another top army right here, the AdMech. They've been, tearing up the top. So I don't know if this is carried over from the last data slate. I haven't had time to go back and look, or if this is all new stuff, but why don't you run us through what the AdMech did here?
So the removing core from Ballistari and the update to the Lucius Dogma are nothing new. That's not anything we're seeing that's new. A big one is that Clandestine Infiltration, I believe that's going to be new. So you can only use the stratagem twice. And if I remember correctly, that's the stratagem that allows you to pull a Skitarii Infiltrator unit off the board and bring them back in your next turn's reinforcement phase. So being able to limit people to that means that they're not having these almost untouchable action junkies coming in, dropping an action, coming back out next turn, and then doing it again on the opposite side. So it makes Ren's R&D, retrieve Nachman data, much harder for them to acquire. Acquisition at any cost. Let me look that one up as well. I believe that is the stratagem that affects not the Skitarii Infiltrators, but the really big melee unit that's people see a lot, but it gives them added bonuses, I think, to their defensive nature. Let me see here. Acquisition at any cost.
What were they called? Not the Infiltrators. They were the.
I can't think of their name, but Electro Priests.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's see here. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's the one that gives them added emblem saves or armor saves, or maybe just a bonus 2 saves. But that is it.
Yeah, because for a while, AdMech was doing really well, and then they got the Balance Dataslate treatment last time, and they also got some points increase, and now you don't see them up top so high.
So acquisition at any cost is actually their automatically pass morale as long as they're on an objective stratagem. So being able to only use that once means that you're not auto passing morale more than twice per game. The Galvanic Volley Fire, I believe, is still from the old update, and then the enriched rounds are also from the old update. So not too much new for AdMech.
So let me ask you, since you judge events and stuff like this, and I try and get to as many tournaments as I can, but I get busy and stuff happens. But with this new thing of, hey, you can use this stratagem once, you can use this stratagem twice, whose responsibility at the table is it to keep track of that? Is it the players, or should you be keeping track of it too as your opponents? Or if you're a judge and someone called you over and been like, hey, he used that once already, How do you, how do you, is there a way to keep track of it?
So the best way to keep track of something like that is obviously to have both players keeping track of it. It's really hard when you have players that are newer to the game and sometimes they quick read and don't realize that they can use something only once. And of course, we also have, the issue of playing by intent, where people intend to do certain things and other people will try to allow them to do it just in the grace and the spirit of the game, which is great. Unfortunately, there are a very few amount of people, but there are some out there who do not play in the spirit of the game. And honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about having to keep track of that. That definitely has to be put on the players. Unless it's at a table with a stream or a top table, it's very hard for a judge to just be there at each table to determine whether or not a stratagem that was only used once should be used. But typically, I believe every player wants to play fair. Every player wants an honest victory. And I personally have never had an issue with an opponent using a stratagem with limitations such as this more than once. It's not been anything new. Every book has one or two stratagems you can only use once or twice. And I think over the course of the last 4 or 5 years that stratagems have been in existence, that I've never run into that issue with another player gives me a lot of hope that it's not something more than just what the players can police with each other.
Perfect. And the salamanders got a little bit of love here.
Yes, so my green boys, I was really concerned when I read Armor of Contempt because obviously anything that reduces AP will not stack with Armor of Contempt. Well, the second bullet point of the Salamander's chapter tactic, which, and for the record, the only time I have not played a Chaos faction was when 9th edition Space Marines were released, and I played Salamanders. So having Traitor of the Trade, if it's any consolation, I pretended they're Alpha Legion. They're just infiltrated. So going from having, ignore AP1 to reducing AP1 in Armor of Contempt is a big buff for all Marines, as we already know. Now we're seeing a second army that already had that mechanic instead being granted a no wound roll reroll ability. And in the terms of durability, when you're looking at so many armies and so many units, being able to just reroll wounds and even just having a command point in the back to make sure you get rid of that unit of Blade Guard, this means you don't have that option. Either you stick with that 4-up from the transhuman on your wounds, or you just don't kill the unit. There's really no choice. So it makes it very strong defensively.
Oh, here's your boys, Chaos Space Marines.
Yes, I mean, I'll talk about it. It's not new, but I'll talk about it.
Do you just get one additional hit on a 6+, right?
Yeah, all through the entirety of 8th edition, I was hoping for the day to come where I didn't have to roll another attack roll on a 6. I think the biggest thing about this too is the fact that it still maintained its ability to be modified, which helps and hurts depending on the weapons that you use. But for the most part, you can do some funny things with lightning claws, I gotta tell you. So, for example, one of my personal favorites, I know a lot of people out there who play Chaos Space Marines have pretty much set their sights on Emperor's Children as being the top dog of the Chaos Space Marines. So, being the top of the bottom is nice and all, but my personal favorite would be World Eaters. And one of the reasons is because of the sheer volume a unit can put out in melee with World Eaters. Just one quick example, 2 CP on a Terminator unit for Red Butchers will put out a dual Lightning Claw unit of Terminators that can, on average, hit 140 times with Lightning Claws. And you can spend another command point to give an additional AP as well. And you can stoke the nails so that way your explosions hit on 5s, increasing that number. It is insane. It is just one of those things that can just mulch through pretty much anything until you can't reroll wound rolls. But even then,
I was watching that this weekend at Bianco's Emperor's Children. I was rolling a lot of dice. That's good and all, but it eats into your time.
Yeah, a big part of that is making sure that you can manage your dice well. Having pools of dice sitting aside with exact numbers that you need is what you should do. Personally, I'll either have I carry around a dice bag that's got over 200 dice in it. It doesn't matter if I am playing an army that makes 6 attacks per guy and only has like 20 guys, or if I'm playing, you know, 200 pink horrors shooting 3 shots each. I'm going to have this massive bag of me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate myself piles of 5, piles of 10, depending on the unit that I'm using. And that just helps your time go so much faster. And roll in batches. You don't have to roll every single dice at once. If you know you're making 60 attacks, go in 20. Well, you know what? Maybe by that 40th attack, you don't even have to keep rolling.
It's gone.
It's gone. Yeah. You got to measure how your time is going to work in regards to your dice, because figuring out how many dice to roll and then actually rolling them can be the biggest eater of time in a clocked game, next to decision making, which is the biggest eater of time.
Now, my favorite part, because I played this army when I first got into Warhammer. I mean, I got in when what was it? The box where you got half Death Guard, half Space Marines. So I built the Space Marine one.
Dark Imperium.
Yes. And then I built the Death Guard. I'm like, well, I need another army. So Death Guard. And they were my favorite and they didn't die. And it's amazing. And I had Mortarion. But now look at this. Your Terminators. Objective secured.
Yes. This was needed, if anything. Death Guard have a great ability to maintain objectives through the usage of Poxwalkers, but Plague Marines aren't really something to look twice at because they don't perform. Now we're going to be seeing things, and my personal favorite that I've, personal list that I've made for fun currently is 30 Blightlord Terminators, just 100 or 1,200 points of Blightlord Terminators with bolters and swords. So you're reducing everybody's toughness by 1 for your contagion, and you're getting all these rerolls to wounds and hit, and you have tons of bolter shots. It's something like 108 bolter shots and then 6 blight launchers, not including what a tally man can do to have them exploding 6s and shooting. But on top of that, they've got objective security. They can sit in the middle and just fire that 24-inch bolter in a full circle. And when we talk about volume of fire, unless you've got a 2-up armor save, 100 shots should probably take you down, as long as you're hitting and wounding. The other big, go ahead.
You can make them plague weapons too, right? The bolters?
Yes, so there's 2 ways to effectively make them plague weapons. One is through the stratagem to give them, plague bolt weapons, so, plague rounds. The other one is actually my personal favorite, which with a 30 Blightlord bolter list, I would actually go with a Foul Blight Spawns Flamer using a 1 CP stratagem for bountiful gifts to give it an 18-inch range, and then another command point, so that way the unit that you scored a hit against with that weapon, which the Flamer, the Plague Spear automatically hits, all of your weapons that aren't plague weapons get to reroll 1s to wound against that unit.
Oh,
so
nice.
Yeah, so effectively you can just give all of your bolters plague weapon and just dump shots into the one thing you want dead until it's dead, and then pop a command point to give true plague weapons for the last unit. But honestly, offensive abilities aside, the biggest thing about this is the defensive buff that these Terminators have received from Armor of Contempt. They are effectively at a 1-up save, and I believe I have the profile written down here because obviously it is very potent, but effectively having a 1-up armor save, because if you're hitting me with AP 0, I'm at a 2-up anyways. They also have the -1 damage buff. They have a 4-up invuln. They're T5. And if you throw a Plague Surgeon in the midst of them, you're sitting with a 6-up Feel No Pain on 3 wound Terminators as well. So it's going to be very difficult for a unit, even with high damage output, to chew through 30 wounds at a 1-up armor, 4-up invuln, T5, -1 damage, 6-up Feel No Pain. It's pretty much as defensive as I feel this game can get.
Yeah.
And pray they're not in cover.
I'm going back to Death Guard. No, I'm just kidding.
It is a good
I'm
pace.
to playing Black Templars for the year, so that's what I'm going to do. Play
That's
Black.
okay. You know, the year's going fast.
That's. Let's see, Jacarro. Anything change here? Is this just all new stuff carried over from the previous one?
If I remember, obviously the core from Talisman Chronos, the Dark Technomancers, and the Artists of the Flesh already existed, but I do not remember this Agile Hunter's Obsession to be having their movement increased to 3 instead of 2 if they have the Hypex. But honestly, it's not anything that's game-changing for Jacarro. It's nothing new. It's nothing that's going to shift them up. And the same with Necrons. Things got core. That's nothing new. Orcs. One unit of each buggy, nothing new.
You mean the Void Weavers of the orcs, the rocket truck squig buggies that everyone went out and got, and then went, oh, I can't run 9.
Yep, that's pretty much where it's at.
Oh, like you, I haven't been able to play the new Harlequin, so I don't have much knowledge on this. So I'll let you run with this one, the Harlequin. So
with the Harlequins, obviously we've had a major issue with Harlequins in today's meta. Having 9 Void Weavers with the damage output of those prismatic cannons, as well as the survivability coming from being in light, so that way you can only be hit on hit rolls of 4 up if you're so far away. The Mirror Architect pivotal role being a 6-inch aura that reduced any ranged weapons targeting your units within that aura by 6, and the favor of Sagorok, allowing your warlord to treat things as modified 6s is cute. But having all those defensive buffs on a unit that's already -1 to hit, cannot reroll hit rolls against them, and you're sitting in the back, so that way if you've got medium range high damage weapons, they're just not going to reach. You have much less interactivity, and while on the same point, those guys have hyper mobility. They can move very fast. They have good range. They have good shooting potential. They have great damage output. They really are everything the Harlequins essentially needed to perform in today's meta, but they're a bit too strong. So I'm really happy to see that the change in Mirror Architect becoming a chosen ability in the command phase rather than aura, but I feel like it might have been a little too heavy-handed with keeping it to core, because now it's only limited to being able to buff defensively troops and Skyweavers, the bikes. So a lot of the defensive buff of the Void Weavers and being able to remain in the backfield is now gone. On top of that, there has been a major points update. And I mean, we talk about points, just destroying lists before. In one of the prior points updates, I was playing for a very long time. I even did it at the Hammerhead Major. I got to play against the good man named Adrian Phillips. I think a few of you might know about him. He's a very good player, and I felt I had a very good chance going into AdMech with a 100 Poxwalker Terminus S list. And I was winning lots of games with that list. It performed very well. It had just about everything the Death Guard needed at the time, except for the fact that AdMech just chewed through infantry like paper. Well, after the points update before this, Blight Lord Terminators went up in points, Death Shroud Terminators went up in points, Poxwalkers went up by 1 point each. My list ended up going 180 points over, which just made me scrap the list. I mean, there's no point in running it at that point when it's taking that huge of a hit. Well, we're seeing this now in a much worse way with Void Weavers. These people who are playing 9 Void Weavers have seen a 360 point increase to their lists, not including whatever else they're paying extra for the Star Weaver. I don't know about you, but I can't just shave 360 points off a list to try to make it viable again. This is now, no, it's not possible. It's, if you still want to run nine Void Weavers, bless your heart, you are probably just having 9 Void Weavers in your army. It's crazy. I mean, I'm with a lot of other people in thinking that points increases aren't necessarily a balancing factor in a game. But at the same time, when you're looking at a unit where you get 9 models that just do anything that you want, and now you have to play another 360 points, that is kind of a way to fix it. Personally, I would have rather seen them drop them to 2 per unit and keep the points where they're at, but they went this route.
They solved that
feel like
problem.
it's ow. Yeah, I mean, there's not much else I can say. Ow.
And in the FAQ, if I remember correctly, the troops got the core keyword, right?
Correct. So the troops and the bikes, the Skyweavers, all are the only core units in the book.
Now, the other menace that's been on the tabletop lately is the Tau. So basically, your option now are crisis suits, right?
I mean, people feel that way because broadsides became very popular in the current meta because of their mortal wound output and their damage output without having to dedicate yourself into a lot of T7, 3-up armor, no invuln tanks that only have 1 shot each. So the big thing with this, obviously, is removing core from broadsides to remove a lot of the bonuses that they can be granted. But honestly, that's not going to be a huge difference. It just means that people aren't going to be taking broadsides as much. They are going to be looking at more crisis suits, like you said. Because at the end of the day, what are you as a Tau player if you're not running a bunch of crisis suits, right? The biggest thing for them right now is how monk call changed. So we are still in a meta for the last few years, 3-4 years now, of first turn is very strong. If you can eliminate a good portion of your opponent's tools, then you're that much further to victory in the first turn. A big part of that for Tau was being able to choose monk call. But now monk call no longer grants you its reroll wound rolls of 1 bonus to anything within the 18 inches, 12 inches, and 6 inches, I believe, is how it scales from turns 1, 2, and 3. So now it has to be the closest enemy unit within the range shown. So a lot of players, and especially skilled players, will put units that are tough enough without being necessary for victory to have these crisis suits throw their plasma guns, throw their fragmentation launchers, throw their flamers, knowing they won't be getting those rerolls to wound against a unit that they want to live. You can play around it now. Second point, devastating counterstrike for Farside Enclave. I believe it used to be a 12-inch range. This is huge because now it means strike suits that decide to go into deep strike as Farsight will drop down outside of the 9 inches because you do have to be 9.001 away from an enemy model, which means, 0.1, whatever the measurement is, you have to be outside of 9 inch when you drop from deep strike and from reserves typically. So you won't be getting those marker life bonuses. You won't be getting those automatic +1s to hit from Farside Enclaves anymore. And then on top of it, we have the repulsor impact field and photon grenade stratagems. These are definitely things that were very important for melee-centric armies to avoid because it reduces your charge roll by 2. If you're already in cover, or in a difficult ground, then you're sitting at a -4. Well, they changed that to where they're no longer cumulative, which means your chargers will be getting into those strike suits a little bit easier.
And Death Card doesn't care about those things. So
yeah, Death Card never cared about those things. So another reason to play 30 Blightlord Terminators.
So, Adam, something interesting. We've reached the end, right?
We have reached the end.
But one thing I saw today and I wanted to bring up is, according to Games Workshop, this is supposed to be a living or updated document, correct? So when the new one comes out, the old ones are no good. That's why you see the thing for Necrons, the Orcs, the Chaos Space Marines, correct?
That's correct.
But I don't see the Knight stuff in here.
What? The Knight stuff is missing? Oh my God. So, yeah, of course, we already know that these are missing here. We know that the Knights Codex is around the corners, everybody. We know that they're coming. This rule is more likely than not going to live in those codexes, so you just have to wait a month or 2 before it comes out. But as of now, and obviously for tournaments that I run, I will not allow people to use rules as intended for a rule that no longer exists in a data slate. We all like OBSEC Knights. I too love the Chaos Knights, but we will have to wait for our time, friends. These rules are no longer in the data slate.
So if you're running a tournament next month and we don't have a codex, you'd rule it, hey, no OBSEC because she gone.
I guess my first question would be, show me where it's written.
Yeah, because that's and one thing I got for you is, what is your feeling real quick outside of this data slate, just real quick? What is your feeling towards, there's a lot of discussion going on right now with the Crusher Stampede thing, like, because as you know, a lot of the new Tyranid book has been leaked. Do you feel as there's going to be something to fix it? Because if you take that Crusher Stampede stuff with the new book and combine it, you got some power there. But if you're like, hey, once this book comes out, Crusher Stampede's no longer a thing, how do you feel about that? What do you think?
So there already has been a bit of precedent for this. We have seen codex supplements come out in certain supplemental books like Octarius and things like that. In example, we have Metallica for Adeptus Mechanicus. We have the Army of Renown that lived in the book with Metallica. Not for the veteran cohort, but it was for something else that is not that great. But even though AdMech released after that Army of Renown was put into a book, it was still valid. It's still viable. It's still usable. I imagine once we start seeing the Tyranids Codex actually out and people start questioning more about whether or not Crusher Stampede is valid, we will get a definitive answer from Games Workshop. My biggest, I would say, opinion on it is that they should just update it to remove the -1 damage characteristic, because it exists on all these Tyranid monsters natively anyways, to avoid this -2 damage thing coming around to really just irk the meta. Other than that, I do think the Crusher Stampede will still be around. I think it is a very good way of playing the game. There's definitely a huge sect of Tyranid players that only play Tyranids because they want big monsters. Let them run their big monsters. Let them have their Crusher Stampede.
Perfect. Well, Adam, thank you for taking the time. I mean, we'd love to have you back when we have more rules things come up with all the new stuff coming out, if you'd be willing. So we love having people on that can spread some knowledge and help some folks out, because there was a lot today. There's a lot to unpack. So
it was definitely quite a bit. I think the game is already looking towards a much better state. I think we are definitely looking forwards to more updates of this caliber, rather than just slapping points on models and saying, "Oh, that'll fix it." So here's to GW for making one good move for a while.
what do you say to the people who saw this data slate, like who are playing Custodes or Talon? They're like, well, my army's ruined, I'm not even going to play Warhammer anymore. Or the people that just feel like, oh, this just isn't a thing. Are they overreacting, or?
So nobody wants their toys taken away from them. We all know this as kids. But at the end of the day, most of us are adults. We play this game because we love the game, not just because we want to win. And we do have to take in consideration that other people also need to have fun. We have a community that wants to thrive off of the ability to enjoy being with each other. So if you think that a balanced data slate or an update that hurts you is going to push you out of the game, you may want to reconsider where your priorities lie and go play a crusade. Go play something for fun. Do something that is away from the competitive. Stop thinking about winning and start thinking about just enjoying yourself and doing the things that make you happy in the game, and you'll be much better off as a player. And you might even see yourself improve as a player instead of maybe potentially just net listing whatever is winning at tournaments.
Perfect. Well, Adam, thank you for taking this time. And for people, Adam will be up here. He's got a different list than most people see. He will be up here streaming on the 30th, correct?
Yes, sir. I will be there on the 30th, and it is going to be chunky.
There we go. Well, Adam, I'm going to end it here, but thank you for stopping by and talking with us. We hope to have you around in the future, sir.
Thank you for having me. Can't wait to come back.
Thank you.